Welcome, welcome everyone. I'm going to give everyone a few minutes before we get started to join. And thank you all so much for coming, and enjoy some jazzy tunes while we give everybody a few minutes to join. Welcome, welcome. Thank you all so much for coming. Welcome to part 2 of our Cloud Developer Tools series, Intro to OAuth and IBM Cloud App ID. So today we'll be covering authentication and how to secure single-page applications we'll do a little walkthrough and a demo of what is authentication, why do you need it in your projects, why is it so important, and then we'll give you an introduction into IBM Cloud's App ID, and we'll walk you through a workshop to a hands-on workshop to show you how to secure single-page applications with our App ID service. So thank you so much for joining us today. So to start, I'd like to introduce myself and introduce our other speaker as well. Feel free to share in the chat as well if you would like, no pressure. But you're all part of our network now. We're all part of the same community, the tech community, the dev community, the tech sales, PM, curious about tech community. So let's all get to know each other a little better. So my name is Jenna. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a cloud developer advocate for IBM Cloud. I'm from Detroit, but I'm currently joining from my parents' house in Western New York. I'm out here babysitting. And let's see, something I love, switch it up a little bit, not too crazy. So something I love is a really good tuna sandwich. Tuna salad or tuna melt are my go-tos, but I really love a good tuna salad sandwich. A quirk, something that's uniquely weird or different about you. So I guess a quirk of mine is the older that I get, the more I'm turning into my dad, apparently. And since I've been staying out here, apparently I irritate him so much because we're so much alike. He's just can't understand how we used to live in the same house. So just like the Progressive commercials, I'm turning into my dad. So that's a little bit about me. Feel free to share about you yourself in the chat. We'll be checking in there too to get connected and better acquainted with you all. I would like to introduce our facilitator for our workshop part of our session today, Joyce, and I will let her introduce herself to you all before we get started.
Hey everyone, I'm Joyce. I'm currently a software developer on IBM Cloud. I work in the security services department currently as a UI developer. I'm originally from Seattle, so I grew up there, did my undergrad at the University of Washington. And then I moved out to Austin about 2 years ago to join IBM and really loving it. Weird fact about me, I have a weird thing about naming all my plants after the first plant I've gotten. So when I first moved here, I got a palm tree and I named him Steven. And every other plant I've gotten has been Steven 2, Steven 3. And I think I'm just gonna continue on and just see how many Steven plants I could get. And so that's a fun quirk about me, I guess.
It's like Audrey 1, Audrey 2.
Is that a thing?
From Little Shop of Horrors.
I don't know that reference, unfortunately.
Okay, I guess I'm dating myself. Look at it. Okay, if you haven't seen it, Little Shop of Horrors, old movie. It's got one of the original Ghostbuster guys in it to have some sort of reference, but he has Venus flytrap, so it's Audrey 2. So the first one was Audrey, but he's feeding Audrey 2. Anyway, now you all know. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, Joyce, for being here. Evan, I see you in the chat. Thank you so much. Our unofficial, official, all around, does all the things guy, our number one developer advocate guy. At every event, taking care of all you. Glad to have him. Okay, so just to take care of a few pieces of housekeeping while we get started. So you might be wondering, well, where are we going to get access to all the slides? So this is the link to the slides. If you scroll to the very top of the chat, I have posted for you the event slides, the live stream recording, the IBM Cloud sign up, and the IBM Developer Austin meetup group, where you can find more of our events coming up, and the rest of our past events from the rest of the year. So this is the link to access all of the slides. You will have access to all of the slides today, so don't worry if you need to step away or you come in late. You will be able to access a copy for yourselves. Next question, is this being recorded? Yes. So all Crowdcast streams are recorded, and it will be available at the same URL you joined with today at the end of the event. So immediately following the event, it'll convert into a recording and you'll be able to access it again. So if you haven't already, if you don't already have an IBM Cloud account, you can sign up for one here. Also, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a little button that does a little shimmer animation. If you click the IBM Cloud sign up button there, you can also be redirected to sign up for an IBM Cloud account. So the button at the bottom of the screen that says IBM Cloud sign up, we use that for check-in purposes. So if you haven't already, go ahead and just give the button a click. You don't have to do anything afterwards, but we do use that for check-in for the live events. So go ahead and just click the button there, and don't worry about doing anything after that. You can close out the window that it redirects to if you'd like. So if you would like to follow along with the workshop or do the work at home and you don't already have an IBM Cloud account, you can sign up for a free light tier account with the link or the button at the bottom of the screen. And you'll sign up for a free IBM Cloud account. Someone posted there's an issue with, I will fix the URL to the slides. Yep, I'll fix the URL to the slides in just a minute for all of you. Sorry about that. So you can sign up for a free light tier, so you can build and deploy applications, deploy them to IBM Cloud. You can use over 40 different light tier plan services, App ID being one of them. And we'll be covering a few more services in the later series as well. So there's plenty of stuff that you can do that's really cool and fun to play with. Build applications, create cool projects that you can all do for free. And a few things that I wanted to suggest to all of you. So I combed through all of our badges. So one of the things that I really want to do is help all of you upskill and really promote yourself well to potential employers. So a really good way to do that is to earn badges. So these are really nice. They're not just answering some questions. A lot of them are hands-on, so you're actually building out applications using different IBM Cloud resources. And when you finish and you complete, they're all free. First of all, they're all free. You have free access to all of them. Once you earn badges, you can put them on your LinkedIn. You can put them on your other social accounts. So it's really nice. So the first one we have here is the IBM Cloud Essentials V2. This is really your IBM Cloud fundamentals, cloud fundamentals. The next one is the Cloud Application Development Badge. This is where you're going to really get more hands-on and learning about cloud development essentials for building cloud applications. And the last one is the Applied Cloud Development Badge. So this is a second step from the last badge that we just looked at, where it's taking a deeper dive into building applied cloud applications on IBM Cloud. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Slide. There we go. So if you're new, what we're going to be talking about today is authentication and authorization. So the goal of this workshop is to create a single page app from scratch using React and adding authentication capabilities to it. So regardless of whether your app is web-based or mobile or it's a cloud native application, you'll need to add some sort of authentication, or anytime you're adding login to an application or a project you're building. That's what we're referring to when we're talking about authentication and authorization. So you'll need to add some sort of login functionality to either limit access to the application or backend resources, and even to further customize the overall app experience for your users. So maybe you have different type of users on a website. You want to make sure that depending on which type of user profile they're logging in with, they're only getting access to certain parts of the application or seeing different views. So this is where authentication and authorization come in. So when we're talking about authentication, this refers to the process of confirming identity. So in authentication, a user or application is proving that they are who they say they are, by providing valid credentials for verification. So their password, for instance. So normally this is through an email and password or username and password. And sometimes it's combined with other elements called factors. So for instance, when you're checking in for a flight, you're putting in your email and your last name and your password, or maybe you're putting in your flight confirmation number and your last name and your account number. So these are different factors. So for example, single factor authentication is just a password. So two-factor is a password in addition to a piece of confidential information. So single factor is you're logging into your IBM Cloud account and you're just putting in your username or email and password. Two-factor authentication is when you're logging into your Google account and it's asking you to enter in the code that it just texted your phone. Multi-factor, which uses two or more security factors, such as using a password and also security code to the user's cell phone. So I'm sorry, two-factor is password in addition to a confidential piece of information like your flight confirmation number, for instance. Multi-factor is when we're referring to getting a security code to your cell phone to confirm your account. So authorization comes after successful, so the second part, authorization, is going to come after a successful authentication, and it's going to determine what the users can and cannot access by way of an access token. So we'll talk a little bit more about access tokens in just a little bit. There we go. Okay. So under the hood of authentication and authorization are the following basic concepts. So OAuth 2 is the open standard protocol that is used to provide application authorization. OIDC is an authentication layer that works with OAuth 2. Let me grab this link here for you all as well so I can share this. So OAuth 2 is about resource access and sharing. So a way to get an access token. And OIDC is all about user authentication. JWT is a way that accesses tokens and identity tokens can be represented. And I'm going to put in the chat for you here all of these resources we have available at the end, but just to share with you now so that you can have them as we go along. Sorry. Okay. So the OAuth 2.0 authorization framework defines several flows, also referred to as grant types. And this allows you to get an access token. So you should choose one that is suited for your type of application. The implicit flow returns the access token in the URL directly rather than being returned by a trusted back channel like the auth code flow. So the access token itself will be logged in the browser's history. The flow is no longer recommended for client-side applications because of its security flaws. So we'll be talking about what the current industry standard is for single-page applications in just a moment. So just to note, when the application makes the request for the access token, that request is authenticated with the client secret. And that reduces the risk of an attacker intercepting the authorization code and using it themselves. So for this, let me post this. There we go. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to talk about securing single-page applications and how to do that. So a key part of the authorization code flow is the assumption that your application can securely store its client secrets. So public clients or single-page applications are unable to securely store these secrets because the application is run entirely from the browser. So all of its secrets are available embedded within the code. So a new flow is needed for this use case, and thus the implicit flow was created. So how this flow works is after a user successfully authenticates, as part of the authorization response, the implicit flow directly returns an access token. So as we talked about earlier in the authorization code flow, instead of returning an access token, an authorization code is the return, which can then be used at the token endpoint to get your access token. So like I said, the implicit flow returns that access token as part of the URL as a query parameter or in the hash fragment. By doing so, the tokens can be intercepted and tokens can be accessed. Additionally, the tokens might be saved in a user's browser history or logs. The history or logs might be stored in a cloud service and sent to multiple devices, which then also heightens the risk. So as if this wasn't enough of a security risk, the implicit flow is also susceptible to a redirect URI attack, which means that an attacker might replace an approved redirect URI with a destination of their choice. How this works is the users follow the changed link to authorize their client. And then after authorization, they're redirected to the attacker's URI instead, which gives the attacker access to the user's legitimate tokens. Okay. So all of that sounds really bad and scary, right? So the good news is there's a new recommended method to securing single-page applications, and that is using the authorization code flow with proof key for code exchange, otherwise known as PKC. So again, that's proof key for code exchange. So PKC is FIXI. So PKC is an enhanced authorization code flow that replaces using the client secret with a code challenge and verifier. The code verifier is a cryptographic random key that is unique to each authorization request. Specifically, it's string with a minimum length of 43 characters. The code challenge is derived from the code verifier. The challenge is the encoded version of the code verifier. So a challenge method can optionally be sent with the code challenge. If it is not present, that it defaults to plain. A more secure option than plain, however, is to use S256. If you're curious about learning more about this, I included the links in the chat to give you some more in-depth detail into each of these topics. Okay, so this is a diagram of how Pixie actually works. So when the application makes an authorization request to the server, it includes the code challenge. Optionally, it can include the code challenge method as well at this step. The server returns the authorization code, and later on when the application is making a request to the token endpoint, it includes the code verifier. So before returning an access token, the server confirms the validity of the code verifier. And if it's invalid, access will be denied. So the important piece to take away from this diagram is that utilizing Pixie is an addition to the authorization code flow. Okay, so this is going to replace the client ID and the secret. This is showing how to securely authenticate and authorize a single-page application with the authorization code in Pixie Flow. So first, a user attempts to log into the single-page application. Sorry. Walking through the steps of we're gonna introduce App ID in just a second, so maybe we should come back to this. I'm gonna come back to this in just a second. I'm gonna introduce what a nice solution for this is, and then I'm gonna walk you back through this figure of how that actually is working for you. So what have we learned so far? So we've learned that adding authentication and authorization can be risky and complex, which is why we want to use identity services such as App ID to handle the complexities for us, so we don't need to be security experts in order to implement this and have security. So what are some features of App ID? So the first feature of App ID we'll talk about is authentication. So you're able to add user sign-in and sign-up for your mobile device and web apps. So similar to how you use your Google account to sign up for some type of platform, or you use your GitHub account to sign up for your Replit account, for example. This is how we're adding user sign-up to our mobile and web applications. So we're able to authorize access to the backend resources and APIs on any cloud with App ID. So additionally, you can use any identity provider, so including enterprise, social, proprietary, or App ID's scalable registry, so which is called Cloud Directory. So with Cloud Directory, you can add additional security with multi-factor authentication. You can also authenticate applications rather than users. So the next feature is profiles. So this is something we talked about, different user profiles having different amounts of access to applications. For instance, with Airbnb's application, are you a potential renter, or are you someone that actually owns the property and is looking to rent out to renters? So with App ID, you have the ability to build custom app experiences for your users. So you can use profiles to store and access user data that you need to build engaging experiences, such as user app preferences. The next is user management. So App ID also allows you to leverage a scalable user registry for your applications, so users can sign up and sign in with an email and password. So users can manage their own accounts through self-service flows like reset password and forgot password. Also taking a look at identity as a managed service. With App ID, you don't have to worry about setting up infrastructure for identity or ensuring geo-availability, compliance, or availability, etc. So App ID is also integrated with IBM Cloud via the IBM Cloud Kubernetes service, Cloud Functions, Activity Tracker, and more. So you're able to seamlessly embed identity into your applications. So you can use App ID to add authentication to your mobile and web apps and protect your APIs and backends running anywhere. No code changes or redeploys are required for your containerized applications. You can add email and password-based sign-up and sign-in and multi-factor authentication with App ID's scalable user registry, cloud identity, or social login with Google or Facebook. For employee applications, you can use SAML 2.0 federation to let users sign in with their enterprise credentials. So for all app users, you can enrich their profiles with additional info so you can build engaging experiences. Let's hit this here. I'm going to share a little link in here. Okay. All right. So we're going to take a look at this, and then we're going to go back. So here's an overview diagram of how App ID works, or App ID in a nutshell, if you will. So as a recap, it's a service to add authentication and authorization capabilities to your applications. So it connects identity providers to your application in an industry standard way. So now if we go back to look at okay. So now if we go back and look at this diagram that we looked at just a minute ago. So if we work through the authorization code and Pixie flow with App ID, so a user is going to attempt to log into your single page application. The App ID SDK is going to create a code verifier for the authorization request, which is the plain text version of the code challenge. Along with the authorization request, the client sends the code challenge and the code challenge method that's used to encode the challenge. So the authentication flow is started by App ID in a new window. The user then chooses an identity provider to authenticate with and completes the sign-in process. The App ID SDK on the application receives the grant code, and the SDK then makes an XHR request to the App ID token endpoint along with the grant code and the code verifier. App ID then returns the access and identity codes. So we're going to walk you through the steps that you can take to use the App ID JavaScript SDK to secure a single page application. So let me get back to where we were. Okay. So before we get started with our hands-on workshop part, we're just going to talk about a few use cases. So there's several use cases that App ID works best for. So the first and maybe most common is web applications. So for web applications, App ID uses the OIDC authorization code flow that we talked about earlier. We have a Node SDK, which can be used with web apps. That's really nice to use. So the mobile flow, as you may have guessed, is useful for when you're developing an application that'll be installed on a user's mobile device. So we have both an Android SDK and a Swift SDK that can be used for mobile apps. Single page applications are the focus of this workshop. So we have a JavaScript SDK for this case that you'll all get to see firsthand once we get started in just a moment with the workshop. So lastly, the multi-cloud applications with Istio are for applications running on a cluster. So App ID utilizes the app identity and access adapter, which can be configured to work on any OIDC compliant identity provider. The adapter enables App ID to control authentication and authorization policies in all environments, including front-end and back-end applications. And it also does all of this without any code change or redeployments to your application, which is really, really nice. And please let us know throughout the rest of the event and the workshop as well if there's any interest in us to have other workshops working through the flow of any other use cases as well. Let's see. Okay. All right. Okay. So taking a look at App ID specifically, so the flow for the App ID service. Now that you know a little bit more about it, this is a diagram that goes into depth about securing single-page applications with App ID. So I won't go into too much detail. But as you can see, like I mentioned before, this is the authentication code flow with the addition of Pixie. So this is another view with a focus more on App ID than the last Pixie flow that we looked at. So after a user logs in, the App ID JavaScript SDK is going to generate the Pixie challenge and verifier. When there's a request to the authentication or authorization endpoint, the SDK sends the challenge and challenge method. After the user enters their credentials successfully, the browser app makes an XHR request to the token endpoint and sends the Pixie verifier. So if the verifier and the challenge are valid, App ID is going to return the token to the browser. So the figure shows how to securely authenticate and authorize single-page applications users with the authorization code and Pixie flow. So Pixie step, again, is an addition to the authorization code flow. So I'm going to show you a few links. Make sure you're set up with your IBM Cloud account if you'd like to follow along. And then I'm going to pass it back to Joyce, and she's going to walk you through how to use the App ID JavaScript SDK to secure your own single-page application. So this is the link for the App ID SDK, which again is in all of the slides and will be posted in the chat as well. And this is the link to the App ID documentation. And if you haven't already and would like to follow along, please create a cloud account at ibm.biz/devtools App ID Cloud. So let's build something. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Joyce, so that she can walk you through our workshop portion of the event today, and she's going to build an application with all of you.
Alrighty. Thanks, Jenna. Great job explaining all of OAuth. Look at you, a security pro over here.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. Yeah, so assuming everyone already has a cloud account from part one, or if they created one during the session, we would want to create an App ID instance. And I'm just going to go through the slides really quick, and then we'll do it together on creating the instance. And it seems like some people are having trouble creating the free cloud account. If Jenna or Evan can help out with that, that'd be really great.
Yeah, let me just check on that. I'll post in the chat in just a second.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna want to create an App ID instance, and as Jenna mentioned, there's light plans for almost all the services that we offer, so we can go ahead and create a light version of this and play around with what App ID has to offer. And so I'll just go right on ahead into cloud.ibm.com and search for App ID, which will take you here, and then we'll want to select Dallas. I'm nearest to Dallas, and then the light plan, I click create. But I'd already created one, so I'm just gonna go straight to it. I named it intro. Okay, so here is the App ID instance that we created. And so one of the first things we want to do, since we're creating a single page application, we want to go into the applications tab here. And we want to tell App ID what kind of application we're building so we can provide our app the right credentials to use. And so we'll hit add application, and then we'll name this a React app. And since we're building just a React app, it's going to be a single page application. And by selecting this, we're going to use the flow that Jenna was talking about earlier. And then we'll click save, and it's going to generate a new set of credentials that we'll need to have this handy. So if you're doing along this with me, definitely keep this open in another tab. But we're going to need the client ID and some of these URLs here for our app. Okay, so we just created our single page application inside App ID.
Are we supposed to be seeing your terminal or your?
Oh, no, sorry.
Okay.
Just found links on that. So in the link here, it talks a little bit more about tokens. And for your specific question about like timeouts, well, can you elaborate more on the use case for that? Because tokens itself, it has like a default like expiration time where it's considered valid. But if you wanted to make an access token invalid, then that is something that your application should handle. Like if you want to handle it on your app, or if you have like a server-side app using something like a token manager, would work out for that. So reset password, yeah, I could definitely start on reset password. Yeah, so change password requires the ID token, and it's going to be the same thing. It's going to open up a little pop-up, and this is only for Cloud Directory users. Let's go ahead and copy this little snippet and add a new button. And we only want to show the button if it's a Cloud Directory user, and here we'll handle change password. And then let's go reset the tokens again. Let's see what this returns. Yep, it just returns new tokens, and it requires the ID token, which my ID token should be in tokens dot ID token. And we want the full JWT, and we're going to pass that in. And we'll change password. Okay, that should work out. And log in as hello world. Sign in. Okay. Here, change the password. Oh, something went wrong here. Cannot access tokens before initialization. Let's see. Tokens. Ah, it's because I named this the same thing. New tokens. That should fix it. Oh. Change password. Perfect. So this is what that screen will look like for the user when they're going through this flow. Enter my current password and new password. Confirm it. Change password. And so the user isn't logged out or anything. Just the next time they log in, they have to know to use the new password. Fixed timeout time. I believe that is not configurable. Let me see. Yeah, so with App ID wouldn't handle that yourself, so you would definitely need to handle that on your application end. I could walk through a quick, like the Node sample app, since that's like our most commonly used one. Yeah, I'm just going to download this. And the great part about using the sample apps from App ID is that it downloads the file in a zip, but then it also creates the application that you need. So earlier we had to do this manually, but now that I downloaded one, it already created the sample Node app application. And so when you open the app, it is out of the box because it already injects all of the credentials that you need. So I'm going to go ahead and open the zip and open the sample Node sample app. Just do npm install. Pretty sure it's going to try to run 3000. Okay. And so yeah, so you want to make sure that it is added to the redirect URIs. And let's double check that in the authentication settings. And yeah, these are the redirect URIs that we're allowing to communicate with App ID. Still installing. Override this with 2002 just because nothing else running on 3000. Got it. Okay, it's done installing, and I should be able to do an npm start. And it's listening on. I guess season 2. Let's see what's here. Cool. So this is our App ID sample. It's a lot more polished than what I could do in our workshop. Let's log in. Okay, so yeah, so this is like the same flow that we've been seeing our entire time. It's in the same URL. The difference with single page applications, it's a pop-up. I'm gonna go ahead and just log in through Google. And you can see we're in the authorization endpoint. Oh, we can't log out. Okay, let me open a incognito window. Try this again. World. I should be able to use this user because I'm in the same App ID instance. Change the password, so let's see if this works. Wow, that's really confused. For some reason, it's telling me to log into IBM Cloud, which I shouldn't need to do. I'm trying on Firefox to see. I wonder if I'm missing some sort of config I'm not thinking of. Yeah. Localhost 3000. Okay. So yeah, that's super weird. So it looks like I changed a port in one place but not the other. And by default, the app is on 3000. So let me. Oh, and the dev config here, the redirect URL is 3000, but I changed it to 2002.
Can you make it a little bigger?
Yeah.
Oh, you got little again.
Yeah. So this is, as part of the sample app, the setup is that it has a development JSON where it reads in all these variables. So what you're seeing is that it was trying to hit my other application on 3000, but this application I changed to 3002. And then I had also changed the port here to 3002. So let's restart our app. Okay. Let's back to our app and Google should be fine. Cool. Yeah. So it looked like I'm in the protected part of the app, and with the sample app, it's like super nice, and it's basically what I was trying to demo you, but way nicer. And you can see it decodes the token ID token for you. And so this is a very basic thing. And here's a logout button, and it'll log you out. But let's try to hit like that protected thing again. And I'm not able to enter it again because I am no longer authorized because I logged out. And so this is using App ID's like server-side strategies. And so here we're utilizing a few other libraries to help us with this as a node app. So we're using Passport for this. But in the code here, we want to protect everything in protected. And so if we're logged out, then it's going to just redirect you to use to make you log in again. And the protected page we were seeing was just that HTML page. And so, yeah, so everything was just straight out of the box, except for me changing the port number. I didn't have to add any of these in there. It's already added for you. You just npm install and npm start out of the box. Any questions? Okay, well, that's all on my end for this demo.
Thank you so much, Joyce.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and share my screen. And feel free to post any questions in the chat that you might have. You know, we'll have some time to answer some questions if we haven't gotten to your question, or if you have a new one. Here we go. Well, congratulations to all of you for building your first application with App ID service. If you haven't and you're going to in the future, congratulations in advance. You all asked really amazing questions, and I think you're all walking away with a much better application understanding of authentication and authorization in application development, and as well as understanding how to use the IBM Cloud App ID service. So I have some resources here for you, and just a note, I did fix the slides link, so that does work now. So no worries. I also have all of the authentication resources. I'm also going to be adding the extra resources that Joyce has been posting in the chat for us. I'm going to be adding those to a slide as well, so you'll have all of those in one place as well. The App ID resources, so again, this is the App ID SDK and the App ID documentation. And then the links for the different IBM Cloud certifications. They don't take too much time to do, and I would highly recommend. I spent a lot of time last year doing different cloud certifications, Cloud Essentials, Cloud Native Development, Istio, Kubernetes, and they're all free to earn, and they look really good when you're able to work through building applications and add certifications to your LinkedIn. Really helpful in getting noticed by potential employers and recruiters too. So I would like to share with you all some different ways to keep following us for more content in the future. Also, if you would like to connect with us on social, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. You can also check out more content on YouTube, my YouTube channel, and feel free to follow us on the different IBM Developer social media channels. If you have any questions, we're going to hang out for about 5 more minutes to answer those for you. And while you're taking some time to think about what kind of questions you might want to ask, or things you're working on, or you're still taking some time to look at some of the resources Joyce has sent you, feel free to take a few minutes to do that. To all of you who stuck with us through our whole event, thank you so much for coming. Just for reference, I would like to also invite all of you to next week's event. Sorry, let's see. So next week's event is part 3 of our series. I would like to invite you all to register, and we'll be taking a look at IBM Cloud API Connect and creating RESTful routes for our APIs and managing those, and taking a look at understanding what's an API and how to build RESTful routes, and how we have some, how you can utilize some of the IBM services to really build great applications. So thank you all so much. If you have any questions, please feel free to post those, and we will answer those for you. And for the rest of you, we will see you next time. So thank you so much for coming. All right. We'll see you all next week at part 3 of our series, and have a great weekend.